Hi, everybody. Let's get started. Welcome to our lunchtime presentation, Affordable Seniors Housing in Edmonton. My name is Heather Massel. I am the Director of Marketing and Community Engagement with GEF Seniors Housing. And with me as a co-panelist is Denise Roy-Popel, Manager Community Support. Denise, I'll just ask you to unmute and say hello. Still trying to figure out the hang of this.
Hi, I don't know if you can hear me. Good. Hi, I'm Denise. I work with Heather and in GEF, and I oversee our community supports team, which is a lovely team of social workers that help the seniors thrive once they're in one of our communities. And I also do oversee the housing intake. So when a senior is first interested or their family and does the application process, we kind of guide them through that first beginning stage.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. And we'll hear a little bit more from Denise a bit later on. Right now, I'm going to share my screen and we'll get started with the presentation. And just one second, I'm not sure if I actually clicked on it yet. Oh, wait, sorry, folks. Okay, just one second, folks. I'm sorry, I'm having trouble with my screen here. I'll just ask my team if we can see the presentation. Sorry, we'll just be 1 second here. See the presentation? Okay, all right, because I can't actually see it. Okay. Too many screens going, unfortunately. Don't know how to turn them off. Okay, so Affordable Seniors Housing in Edmonton. First of all, a land acknowledgement. Edmonton is located within Treaty 6 territory and within the Métis Homelands and Métis Nation of Alberta Region 4. We acknowledge this land as the traditional territories, traditional meeting grounds, gathering places, and traveling routes of many First Nations, such as the Nahia, Denisolene, Nakota Sioux, Anish Inabe, and Niitsitapi, Métis, and Inuit peoples. Just a couple of quick facts about who we are. GEF Seniors Housing is the largest provider of subsidized seniors housing in Alberta, and close to 4,000 low to moderate income seniors call a GEF community home. So one thing that we always like to start with is our vision, our mission, and our values. And our vision is positively influencing seniors' quality of life. Our mission is leaders in friendly, affordable, secure housing and services for seniors. Our values define how we serve and build relationships with our seniors community and our workplace family. And our values include respect, integrity, well-being, and accountability. So GEF, as an organization, we operate a total of 46 buildings, owned and or operated. So 35 apartment buildings and 11 lodges, which sounds like a lot. And we're probably one of Edmonton's better kept secrets. We are a registered charity and accept charitable donations for a quality of life fund for resident and tenant programming, and for the building for life fund for capital projects. We accept donations online or via mail. So just some quick facts about seniors living with GEF Seniors Housing and where we fit on the affordable housing continuum. So about 80% of GEF seniors live on less than $27,000 a year. 75%, 3 out of 4 of GEF apartment tenants live on less than $2,000 a month. About 95% of GEF seniors live in subsidized housing. That means that they are paying 30% of their gross monthly income for rent. The average monthly rent is about $675. Again, where it's rent geared to income means that it's 30% of whatever that total income is, as it shows on the seniors notice of assessment from the previous tax year. More on that shortly. About 82% of GEF seniors are between 71 and 100 years of age. So our quality of life philosophy is to provide seniors with accessible, affordable, and safe housing in comfortable and supportive environments that promote opportunities to successfully age in place. And this is really important. Our guiding principles supporting quality of life. The first one is choice, and that's being able to not only promote, but respect individual choice and recognize that each senior has the knowledge and experience to be able to determine how they want best to live their life. The others, dignity, well-being, respect, kindness, compassion, and accountability. So operationally, what this looks like when we are making decisions about how we interact with seniors, it's always through that lens of the quality of life philosophy. And what are the decisions that we can make that will help them to live with those 7 philosophical pillars in mind. So in terms of eligibility, because we serve seniors, they have to be at least 65 years of age, or if they're a couple, one is at least 60 years old and the other is at least 65. Canadian citizen, permanent resident, or have completed the sponsorship process. I mentioned subsidized income and subsidized apartment housing and their annual income. So that's line 15,000 on their most recent notice of assessment. They must meet Alberta government household limits, which is currently, so for a bachelor, which is either an apartment or one of our lodge units, is 36,000 or less. For a single in a 1-bedroom unit is 42,000 or less. For a couple is 52,000 or less. Now, that doesn't mean that you cannot live in GEF Seniors Housing if you are able to afford more than that, or if your income is above these levels. It just simply means that your rent will be higher. All right, so if we look at the next slide, it's our locations. And we are all over Edmonton, as you can see, in all quadrants of the city, as far south as Millwoods, and lots on both sides of the river. Many of our buildings are close to major bus routes and or the LRT, shopping and medical centers. So we operate 2 different programs. One is the apartment program and the other one is the lodge program. So the apartment program is apartment style accommodations, and this is geared to seniors who are able to live independently, cook their own meals, and do their own housekeeping. Again, as I mentioned a moment ago, rent is calculated at 30% of annual income, and lots of places to choose from. In the lodge program, that is a supportive living environment which provides meals, housekeeping, and activity and wellness programming. So we do not do care in the sense that we do not employ healthcare aides or healthcare staff. The staff that we have that are on site 24 hours a day are non-medical staff. Now, that said, a number of our seniors in lodges and possibly even some of our apartments do have home care services that they contract privately through Alberta Health Services. And again, with the lodge program, rent is calculated at 30% of annual income plus the cost of support services. And the biggest part of the lodge support services fee is 3 meals a day, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So the average age by housing type, the average age of our apartment tenants is 74 years. The average age of our lodge residents is 83. So people wonder, okay, well, that's great. How can I apply? How can I get into GEF Seniors Housing? So the first place and the best place to start is always with our website, and more on that in a second. But in terms of housing references, when you apply or when a senior applies, they must provide consent for housing reference from previous landlord where applicable. We're looking for what we call functional independence. And that looks different for everybody, and there's a real spectrum. But essentially, it's that they're physically, mentally, and emotionally able to look after their personal needs with or without the assistance of community-based services. They're able to maintain their unit in a safe and clean condition, live amicably with fellow tenants. They do sign a lease, so they're willing to follow the residential lease agreement and tenancy guidelines. That they can manage personal medications, appropriate hygiene, personal hygiene, and maintain an appropriate diet. Now, the maintenance of an appropriate diet is more so in the apartments than in the lodges, because again, we do have staff who are providing the dining services, and that is the 3 meals a day. We also have activity and wellness. I'm going to ask Denise to speak to this part. So Denise, if you want to unmute, and I'll just follow along with you. I'll drive the slides and you can
okay.
Talk to each of these.
Sure. So the activity and wellness, basically formally known as recreational coordinators. So the idea is that once the seniors in the community, the housing of their choice, they are supplied with a calendar every month. And the idea is that it would list all the different activities that are happening in the building that they live in. Some of these are led by the coordinator, and some are peer-led or volunteer-led. And this can be everything from exercise to more craft or woodworking. There's pub nights, there's activities that happen on the weekend, bingos, card games. The idea is that like attracts like, so whatever the interest the senior has, there's usually a group that shares that interest, and really and truly the activity and wellness is just coordinating the interest in the building and providing space, and if needed, a guided activity. Community support program. So basically, when a senior comes in, it's sort of determined what supports they need to thrive and live actively and well in the community they've chosen, in the building they've chosen. Some people come in with supports already, whether it's family, it might be home care contracted through HS, family supports. There are supports that the senior is not connected to. It might be something one time, like applying for a subsidized DATS pass, or it might be something more ongoing. In COVID, we noticed a definite surge in things like isolation, connection to groceries, shopping services, laundry supports, things that they were no longer able to or safely do out in the community. Our community support worker that's assigned to that building was able to contact them, help them connect to those community resources and supports, and get the help that they needed. Community supports I'll mention can also work with families. Sometimes a family member or a support for the senior is not sure where to turn. It could be everything from getting a financial support. Sometimes it's a power of attorney, things like that, where they're not really sure where to start. And again, the outreach worker just helps them connect to the appropriate resource. Heather, you want me to keep going?
Sure.
Okay. Supporting aging in place. So this is something that is right from a provincial level. City of Edmonton does it. What we want to make sure is that the senior is thriving. So whether that generally is out in the community or once they come into a GEF home. So if they're in an apartment or a lodge, we really want to look at what are the things that that senior needs to be happy, healthy, thriving in the housing that they've selected. So we really look at each individual. Part of the application interview process is that it's a really great time for the senior to kind of share their story. We get to know what their needs are, what they're looking for in terms of housing. And so we have a good idea of when they're coming into one of the housing, which one might be best suited for them and what supports they might need to connect to. And we really are looking at just being a strong advocate for them if their supports or issues that they're working through.
Okay, perfect. And Denise, because you're one of the you're one of the GEF team members who actually does interviews, and so we're pretty excited about the fact that we welcome pets, and you have interviewed expectant tenants and their pets. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I'm becoming a member of the Dr. Doolittle team. Yeah, so basically fully understanding that for those who have had pets in and out of their lives, it really is one of their family members, and especially, again, speaking of COVID, for a lot of people, it was one of a companion for them. So yeah, what it means is we have some guidelines around that. We're asking that a pet that comes with a senior is kind of like a co-applicant, meaning that the pet has been with the senior for 3 years or more. We do limit it, especially with cats and dogs, to one pet, like cat or dog per suite, just because the suites, we want to make sure that there's room for everybody to be safe and healthy. In the case of a dog, especially, we ask that the dog come with the senior when they're interviewing, just to see is the pet set for communal living, because obviously the pet's going to be going in and out of the building, be around other seniors. When the senior goes to tour the building of their choice, we ask them to bring their pup with them as well. Again, how does the pet feel? How are they reacting to other people? How are they with the building? I would say that overall it's been overwhelmingly successful. Most of the buildings appreciate having, especially in the case of pups, having a pup around. Whether it's theirs or not, they're really, everybody's saying hi on the way in and out. We do look, when we say a pet-friendly suite, especially for cats and dogs, we're looking at something that usually has flooring, just easy for hygiene reasons and keeping the suite clean. There is, I will mention, a fee. So in addition to the deposit, there's a deposit for the pet. And then I think additionally that's added on to the rent. And it's just for any wear and tear of the suite that may occur while the pet is living with their senior. Heather, I'll let you talk to this one if you want to.
Pardon me?
Yeah, you want to talk to this one, or you want me to keep going?
Yeah, no, I can talk to this, and then I want to put it back to you for a second. So okay. GEF has a clean air initiative. So it is a smoke-free housing option. So it's really important for people to understand that that our buildings are, we don't have, particularly in the apartments, we don't have indoor designated smoking areas. There are still a couple in some of our lodges that are in the process of, eventually they will, there will be changes, but what the idea is that everybody smokes outdoors. So units and common areas are non-smoking. Smoking is only permitted in designated smoking spaces. Most apartments and lodges have designated outdoor spaces. Denise, is there anything that you wanted to add to that one?
Sorry. Yeah, no, I think it's just important to recognize that when on the property, as Heather was saying, there's definitely designated spaces. Some of our lodges do still have indoor vented smoking spaces, but none of the suites are smoke friendly. When outdoors, we follow the City of Edmonton bylaws in terms of how many feet from entrance, things like that. So appreciating and that there are still people that are smoking, that's part of their lifestyle, and we're setting designated areas, but also really striving to protect those that are non-smokers and ensure that they have that healthy environment.
Yeah, that's a great point too, because obviously in a lot of buildings, if they're just more open, and
Yeah.
so your neighbor's cigarette smoke can impact you, and we don't want that. Here we go. On to the next slide. What's included and what's an extra? So included in the rent in our apartments is heat, water, and garbage removal, additional fees for power, optional laundry services. In the lodges, heat, water, and power are all included. We mentioned support services fee, which includes the 3 meals a day, once weekly housekeeping and linen service activities, access to on-site non-medical staff 24 hours a day, and optional services. Now, GEF does require that all tenants, whether in a lodge or in an apartment, carry tenant insurance. So that is something that would be covered in more detail at a housing interview. Denise, did you have anything you wanted to add on that?
Yeah, no, I think that, and all of this, there's always lots of questions around it, but yeah, generally that covers, and this is all on the website as well, all of what's included, not included.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so the next slide, I'm just going to go through it really super quick so that we can get to some of the other things that we want to talk about. So you can apply either online or on paper. There is an applicant portal. It's all on the website, gef.org. And so you can check that out. Give us a call if you have any questions. Now, one of the things that, and Denise, I'll ask you to speak to this in more detail, that is important for folks to understand, again, where we sit on the affordable housing continuum. We are not emergency housing. There are cases where, based on need, and Denise, you're the expert in this area, so I'll ask you to just kind of walk through that in a bit more detail. But we do not offer emergency housing. But when the need arises, we can definitely assist quickly.
Yeah, for sure. So basically, the steps are: application comes in. Seniors, then we reach out to ensure all information that's on the application is correct, or if anything's missing. It then goes to an interview. The interview is such a big word. It really and truly is just a conversation. So one of our housing coordinators meets. We talk about with the senior about, you know, what are some of the challenges, what are the things they enjoy doing, what kind of housing are they hoping for to be their new home. It's just kind of we get to know them, and we kind of talk about what we can offer through GEF Housing. Absolutely, there are situations where things happen. So a senior might, whether it's medical or some other emergency, be hospitalized pending a safer housing option. Sometimes it's more of an emergency or a family situation. So in those cases, myself or one of the other housing coordinators, sometimes we do interviews virtually if they are out of town or hospitalized, usually in coordination with a social worker or a transition worker. We always, we have an idea of where vacancies are. So when there is something that's more immediate, although we cannot, there is a process we have to follow, and we can expedite that process. We can't skip steps. So as quickly as we can kind of go through all the steps we need to. We can look at where we have availability that might best suit the needs of that senior, and try and connect the vacancies we have with the high needs of the senior, and see if we can expedite the process. I wouldn't say that always is the case, but we definitely are aware that, yeah, life happens, things happen, and although we can't promise select buildings or sites, we definitely are aware where we have openings, and if it best matches with the senior, we'll do everything we can to make sure that process goes quickly and smoothly.
Okay, thank you. And as noted, we don't provide emergency housing or transitional housing. Denise mentioned about obviously working with other senior serving agencies. Denise, can you talk a little bit more about some examples of what that might look like?
For sure. So some of the things that we work with, if a senior, like I mentioned, if they are, something happened medically, maybe they had a fall or something where they've been now no longer able to thrive in their current housing, or looking at maybe something more supportive like a lodge. They've gone through some rehab at the hospital, and the next transitional stage is getting them into a lodge. So we would work with their transition worker, their social worker at the hospital, their family member, seeing how can we get them into a safer housing option. Sometimes we work with safe houses. So Sage has some safe houses where it might be more of an emergency situation. We work with them as quickly as we can in terms of trying to find what a safe housing option would be for that senior. Sometimes it's family members that don't live here in the city, and their mom, dad, or loved one is here in the city, and they're trying to do this from another location. So we work with them in terms of how can we, they're not physically here to help out their person, but we can definitely answer questions, chat with them, whether it's phone or virtually, see if we can help coordinate supports for the senior that is here, and getting them into housing that they're requiring. So there's lots of case by case, and it's really client centered. So although we have a process, it is kind of a wiggly road, and sometimes we go off course a bit and help where we need to help. And the idea is that every senior is a little bit different, and their situation's a little bit different, and we try and work with the people that are supporting them to get them what they need.
Okay, thank you. So just real quickly, I want to talk about a couple of developments that we have that are underway. One of them that we're very excited about, Lauderdale Terrace. So that is west of 97th Street and just north of the Yellowhead. And when we first started this project, we actually were thinking that it might be more on the affordable housing side, which is to say that the rent would be a little bit higher as opposed to subsidized housing, which is the 30% rent geared to income. But what ended up happening was we actually applied for and received federal government funding through their Rapid Housing Initiative. And so this was very exciting. We announced, this was announced by the federal housing minister earlier this year, and we were able to take advantage of the funding for the housing, so we could make it subsidized rent geared to income. So we're building it in 2 stages because that's the requirement of how the funding is done. So the first 10 units are going to be ready to be opened up, I believe either late December or very early in January 2022. And there are requirements for the number of senior women and the number of units that are ready quickly. And then the second phase is the 3-story building of another 27 apartment style units. So we're very, very excited about that. We have a second redevelopment that we're doing on the south side in the Holyrood community, and it is called Golden Homes. And that was duplex housing that we are applying to have it rezoned to construct 1 or more buildings up to 3 or 4 stories in height with no more than 50 affordable housing units. So that's a project that we are hoping to see get underway in 2022. And all this information is on our website. So questions, what I'd like to do is we have a number of questions. So I think what we'll do is I will stop sharing. Okay, and now we're back. So now what I would like to do is I'm just going to move my monitor over a little bit here, And then we've got a number of questions, which is great. Now, I did fail to mention that I believe we do have the ability to, oh no, I was going to say,
Heather, I can see the question.
They can upvote. So that's what I was looking for. Sorry, was the upvote button so that everybody could see the questions, and then we could answer that. So we'll start with the first one, and we will perhaps that's one, Denise, that you'd like to answer.
For sure, I can answer that. So I'll just read it in case people can't see it. Are tenants' financial investments considered when calculating the limit of rent geared to income? So it depends on the program. There's with a lodge, those can, it depends on the type of investment. It's a pretty open-ended question. So things like RESP, GICs, RIFs, those we don't consider them. It's more when those come to a payout that it would be reflected on their notice of assessment that we would look at. Things like having a house sale or cashing something in, it's more, it doesn't really change the income. It's more about where they would be in terms of needs and placed on a wait list if that came up. There's always, again, case by case. We do have eligibility for the program that we have to stick to, but if something changes for a senior, we can always reevaluate and look at their current financial situation and see if there's something we can do to ensure that the rent is reflective of their current financial situation. So it's hard to answer this specifically, but really the easy way to say it is it's case by case. There's things we can deduct and consider, and there's things we can't. So that would be something that we would definitely talk about at the interview process.
Okay, thanks for that. And do you want to take the next question as well?
Sure.
This is a really, really good question.
Yeah, no, for sure. Although our buildings do have a non-smoking policy in terms of whether it's marijuana-based or cigarette-based, something like this, which would be more ceremonial, a one-off. It's not something that would be continual all day. Absolutely, I think we would make exceptions for those kind of things because it's just not really fitting into the policy around the smoking and the marijuana. So understanding that everybody has different needs and traditions and guidelines, that was something I would say that we would absolutely be supportive of.
Mm-hmm.
Want me to keep going? Okay. All right. Okay, so the question here is, what are your waiting list occupancy rates like? Has COVID affected these? We have over 40 different properties. So depending on the property itself, in terms of where it is, the area, the population, obviously buildings that we have higher suites. So some that have, say, 200 suites, logistically, suites are going to pop open more often. Whereas if we have a smaller building that might only have 30 or 40 suites, the turnover rate's not going to be as often and as high. So we really talk about that again at the interview, where the senior wants to be, what community. Then we look at what sites do we have within that community. The housing vacancies are weekly evaluated. So in terms of coming into an interview or making a phone call and inquiring, we have almost, I would say, like real-time ideas of what's available. When you kind of selected a building, we'd be able to give you an idea. The thing with wait lists, unless you're in one of the terrace programs, the wait lists are, we can't really tell you at any one time where you are because we use a rating score so that it's not subjective, it's totally fair in terms of what are your needs, what are the supports, what is the emergency, populates the score. So today you might call me and you might be number 4 for the building of your choice, but over the course of today and tomorrow, we've interviewed some other people and their score pops them on the list according to their need. They might be above or higher. So we're really hesitant to talk about what number you are. And also some people on a wait list might not want to move because of COVID. They might be looking for a specific floor or a barrier for your suite, or they don't want to move till spring. So giving a number where you are on that list is not always reflective of where somebody above you might be. But we can definitely try, because I know for families it's a lot to coordinate. We try and ballpark it for you, but during the interview process, we can definitely tell you where we have vacancies, where you can do more immediate move-ins versus, you know, this site is quite popular, so we're looking at maybe 3 months or 6 months. COVID for sure affected it. Twofold. In some places where we didn't traditionally have vacancies, we now do. So like in our lodge programs, prior to that, there was a bit of a wait list, but sometimes what's happened over COVID is some seniors went home with families. Some seniors decided that they were going to stay in the housing that they were in because they didn't want to make a move during citing safety precautions or just unease, like we all kind of felt. Apartments, COVID, yes, some of it. I think those were quite consistent. But again, maybe people who were thinking of a move chose not to. Again, just not sure what's going out in the big scary world and wanting to stay where they are. This one, Heather, would you know more about this one?
It's a great question. I don't actually know the answer to that. People can certainly self-identify, but we don't really. I don't think we really collect any sort of specific information on that.
Yeah, so I'll just read the question for those of you who can't see it. What is your share of Indigenous population? Are there any parts of the city that you receive a lot of Indigenous applicants? I don't think that there's anything that is pointed out where we have a concentration of one culture or another. Some buildings naturally have an orientation to one culture or another, and that's sometimes about the area it's in. So it might be across the street from a Ukrainian church, so it's very familiar, and so a lot of people that know the church and know that area live there, but it's not anything that we direct to or plan. I think because we do a very centralized housing application system, when people come in, we really are talking about the senior as an individual. So it's where do you live? Where are you familiar? What community do you want to be in? What are the needs? And we try and mesh the building. And that's all based more on things like what part of the city you want to live in and what are your physical needs. So we really let the senior guide where they want to be or their family. So again, I don't think it's anything that we track, because it's based on the senior themselves, and every senior, regardless of female or male or whatever, they go to the community they're comfortable in, and we just facilitate that process. We don't guide it in one way or another.
And with all of that said, certainly we welcome everyone at all of our communities, and the more varied the population, ideally all our buildings look like the wonderful multicultural population.
Yeah.
With all of the different cultures and traditions and so on, I think that's wonderful. Okay, so we'll move on to the next question. So this is about the Rapid Housing Initiative funding on Lauderdale. So again, it was part of a large block of money that the federal government provided. You did apply. I have to say, I don't know a lot of the actual details around it. Denise, I don't know if you know more, but one thing that I would expect would be that we may have others who are attending today who may be proponents for a particular type of housing project and may have very specific questions, for instance, about the RHI funding. And if that's the case, or if there's a question that you would like to delve in more detail, it's worth noting, please email us at communications@gef.org or housing@gef.org, and we'll be happy to answer. But Denise, do you have any supplemental information?
I would agree, Heather. Like I would be hesitant to speak to it, to give, in case I gave misinformation. I mean, I've heard and I know, but it is a very complicated process. It is a mixed funding project. So parts of the rapid housing are funded one way. The remaining building that's coming up is being funded and built a different way. And it depends on the money, where the money comes from depends on the type of initiative. So as Heather spoke to in the beginning, some of it is geared at looking at female applicants. Some are, yeah, there's different initiatives that comes attached with different funding. So for this particular project there, it's not one lump sum funding. We're kind of pulling from a lot of different collaborative and cooperative funding basis. So yeah, again, I would say the same thing. If you have a specific question, then that would be something that maybe you could reach out to Heather's communication team, and she will absolutely find you the more specific answer.
Yeah, that's and one other thing that I was reminded of as you were speaking is that people may say, oh, why the difference between what you charge for rent here, what you charge for rent at this other building, is that sometimes there are very specific requirements to the funding, and we have to offer a certain type of housing. So in this particular case, because it is the rent geared to income, subsidized housing, 30% of your gross annual income, and that's specified in the type of funding that we get from the federal government. So that is the piece that we do know for sure, and the type of funding very often will drive how rents are calculated and so on.
I can answer the next one. So the next question also around Lauderdale: when are interviews for Lauderdale Terrace taking place? When are you allowing tenants to move in for the first building? So basically what kind of happened is with the initial rapid housing, the first set of units that are going to be available, there was an existing Lauderdale property, GEF property. And so some of those were long standing tenants that we had really lovely relationships with. So part of what we did is, you know, that's kind of, it's tough news to get that the home that you live in is now exciting, that something new is coming, but you still have an attachment. So a lot of those first initial spaces were earmarked for existing Lauderdale. So in the old development, Lauderdale tenants had been there. We explained the new, and if they met the qualifications, if they met, like Heather was saying, around the funding match, they were offered, obviously that's their home. So if they wanted to be rehoused at the same location in the newer buildings, they were given sort of first choice. So a lot of those first initial units will be going to some of the long-standing Lauderdale tenants. And then with any remaining spaces and the whole new kind of building that will take a little longer to come up, we are accepting applications, but there really isn't any rush to interview, because when we interview seniors from the housing point of view, we give it kind of a year timeline. After a year, lots of things can happen. So if we have someone who's applied or been on a wait list for over a year or longer, we revisit that. So they don't have to reapply, but we definitely re-interview. We just want to know, have things changed? How are things looking? So it doesn't really make sense to start interviewing or start that process until we have a better timeline of when the rest of those, the rest of the Lauderdale is going to open up. And then once we know that we're kind of within that year window or we're coming closer to it, then we'll start opening up interview times. It's just doesn't make sense to interview now when we don't, so many things are still unknown in terms of when it will be open, will it be, what's the time frame. So welcome to apply, and once we get closer and know those dates and get some more concrete answers, then we'll start looking at when we can do that process.
Okay, thank you. That's great. And the 2-bedroom units, short answer is yes. And Denise, again.
No, that's fine. So there's just, do you have 2-bedroom units for couples, especially when they want to live together, but one is higher needs than the other? Absolutely. The thing that happens is that a lot of our buildings, we have very limited amounts of 2-bedroom suites. A lot of apartments have a one designated 2-bedroom, and generally that was because that would be where the on-site manager would live, and the rest are all 1-bedrooms or bachelors. So it's not that when the buildings came to us, they might have 1 2-bedroom suite. So the priority for sure for those 2 bedrooms is couples. we do them as co-applicants. We look at it together. So everything about it, the income, the needs, all that good stuff. So if there is a care situation, so maybe one part of the partnership is caring more for the other, as long as together as a couple, you're able to be independent and your needs are met and you have the supports you need, then yeah, there's no reason. But just a caution, it's not that we're hoarding them. There just really isn't a lot of 2 bedrooms, because no matter the size of the building, we don't have very many, but we do definitely highlight and earmark them for couples. Okay, I'll read this one really quick. Last question I have here is, my income from my pension far exceeds the threshold, but due to being a right leg amputee, would you folks be willing to make exception? If not, would you folks be willing to help me getting a suitable place that would cater to my needs? Yeah, so this is kind of vague, so I'll answer it as best I can with the limited information. Depends on the program. So if it's apartment or lodge, we have a little more wiggle room in the lodge program in terms of incomes. We don't have, the thresholds are a little more open. So if that's what you're looking for, then we definitely, again, lodge have some more wiggle room in terms of that. Apartments, the threshold to be eligible is pretty tight, but that doesn't mean that we can't look. If you feel that your NOA amount is not reflective of what you're currently getting, we can work with you to look at what is your monthly income. In terms of none of the GF properties are a good match, we absolutely would connect you to one of our community supports, like Sage, which has a lovely housing resource. They know whether it would be a private renter or something more corporate. Yeah, we definitely wouldn't just like shred your application and turn you away. So if we can't help, then we definitely can connect you to someone who can.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. I think that's all the questions. And I know we're going to be wrapping up right away here. Just very briefly, I know we touched on before some of the community partners that GEF works with, and Denise, you and I have had conversations about, you mentioned Sage a moment ago, and multicultural health brokers and Drive Happiness, and we have all these different community partners that we work with. And I wonder, can you just touch on very briefly just some of those ways that might work? Let's say we've got somebody who comes in, they're trying to navigate the housing system. English isn't their first language. We're able to help them out. What does that look like? If you can just
For sure. I mean, one of the lovely things about having an outreach program is that the social workers are just, whether it's through different groups we belong to or meetings we attend, the nice thing is there's this really lovely sharing of information around seniors and that whole demographic. So we work in different scenarios. We're aware of Sage and, like Heather mentioned, Drive Happiness. If we need interpreters, there's a couple of ways we do that. If it's identified, we sometimes we have a very eclectic staff. So sometimes someone from our staff will be willing to help us out and translate if that's a language they're available for. We do look at external interpreters if we need. When somebody comes in, we look at what are the supports you have, what are the supports you need. If you are coming into housing and there are some supports that you need to be connected to before you even get into one of the buildings, whether it's a wait list or you're just not ready to move, we can absolutely give you connections, whether it would be Sage or community health, something like that, mental health supports, whatever it is. We can. The idea is that we get you supported and connected, so that when it is you're ready to move into one of the communities, you have all those wonderful things already attached to you. What happens sometimes is once you're in the community and living in an apartment or a lodge, you're not really sure what you need yet. We give you like a month to kind of get settled in, and then you start to say, hey, maybe I need a dad's pass, maybe I need some more home care supports, maybe whatever. We have an outreach worker that's connected to the building you're living in, and that is absolutely what they will work with you to do. If they can't provide that support directly, then we work with these wonderful group of interagencies and collaborative supports that are all senior-centered, focused, that we can connect you to. So it just kind of cuts out the middleman. Instead of you or your family having to go out and try and figure that out and navigate it on your own, we can connect you directly. It's not necessarily everything that we do in-house, but we know a guy, so to speak. So yeah, if you're looking for someone, most likely we'll be able to connect you more directly.
Okay, that's perfect. Thank you, Denise. Well, we are out of time. I want to thank you very much for giving up your lunch hour to join us today. And this presentation is being recorded, so it will be, I believe, on the same link where you would have originally registered. So on behalf of Denise, I'm Heather, and thank you so much for joining us. If you have any questions, again, you can email communications@gef.org or housing@gef.org. So thanks very much, and have a wonderful afternoon, everybody. Take care.
Thank you.